For years, a phantom ache has lived in my chest, a string of fate pulling me toward a man who refuses to meet my eyes. Today, he returns, our pack's celebrated warrior, and I can feel the bond strain with the force of his indifference. He will break it. I know he will. The only question is how many pieces he'll leave me in. Chapter 1. Blood and Silver Thistle. The scent of blood and silver thistle, it clung to my fingers, a life saved. Finn, just a boy really, torn open from shoulder to hip. He'll live, but not because of pack medicine. He'll live because of a secret, a weave of spider silk and crushed moon petal my mother taught me, a magic they would never understand. They never ask, they just expect. The hut flap flew open. Kyle, the pack's beta. He stood there, a mountain of a wolf, his eyes like chips of flint, and those eyes swept right past me, through me. Didn't see the healer, the sweat, the blood. He saw a shadow, a thing. His gaze landed on the mops in the corner. Omega. The word was a low growl, impatient. The great hall floor is filthy. The Alpha King arrives before sundown. See to it. I couldn't speak. My throat was a knot of tight, useless string. The Alpha King. Here? I had just spent hours with my hands holding a boy's life together. And now this? Mopping? You don't argue with a beta. Not when you're me. You just obey. He turned to leave, but paused. And Ayla? That stupid little weed, Hope. It sparked in my chest. Yes, beta? Use more soap this time, he sneered. I can still smell the sick from the last gathering. He was gone, and I was alone. Alone in the silence with the smell of blood and my own failure. I stared at my hands, hands that held power, hands that meant nothing, absolutely nothing. Outside, I could hear it, a buzz, an energy. His name, whispered on the wind. Axel. Like a prayer and a curse. They were preparing for a king, and I was preparing to be invisible, a role I knew all too well.
Chapter 2. The Phantom Crown. A map of borders, a map of blood. I stared at the spider web of lines on the obsidian table, but my mind wasn't there. It was pulled, tugged by a phantom string I couldn't see, couldn't grasp. So damn annoying. Silas, my beta, stood by the fire. Silent. He knows the signs. The Rivermain pack refuses the tribute, my king, he said, his voice flat, a perfect report. Alpha Marcus claims the winter was too harsh. Marcus is a liar. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't have to. He's been selling our grain to rogues, that's because his stores are full. My voice dropped lower. Send a message. Tell him I will collect the tribute myself, along with his head. Silas just nodded. At once. He is loyal, efficient, but he worries. I see it in his eyes. He worries because of Lyra, and the mistake I will never make again. He thinks my crown is made of ice. He isn't wrong. A king cannot afford a heart, not after it's been carved from his chest. Never. Again. Then it happened. A jolt. Sharp. Sudden. Not a tug this time, but a hard yank on my very soul. It pulled me toward. What? My hand clenched. The stone table groaned. An ascent, so strange, hit the edge of my senses. Wildflowers after a storm, and something else, something I couldn't name. My king? Silas's voice cut through the haze. I forced my hand to relax. I forced the mask back into place. Cold. Unbreakable. Fine. I clipped the word. A headache. I pushed away from the table, the phantom feeling fading to a dull, persistent ache. Go. Prepare the council. I want no surprises. He bowed and left. The heavy doors boomed shut, an echo of the emptiness inside me. Emptiness, and that damned relentless pull. An itch under my skin, a distraction I could not afford. Not today.
Chapter 3. Ice and Echoes. He was back, The phantom ache in my chest, the string of fate I'd carried for years, it flared into a bonfire. Orion. He strode into the clearing and the world just stopped. Our celebrated warrior, all muscle and sunlight and easy smiles. My inner wolf howled, a desperate, hopeful cry. Mate, this time, please, this time, let him see me. He didn't. His gaze swept over the pack, that charming smile fixed in place. He greeted the Alpha's daughter. He clapped a friend on the back, a golden god moving among his worshippers. And me? I stood by the healer's hut, a ghost holding a basket of herbs, invisible. I remembered when we were pups. I'd fallen from a tree. He'd found me, carried me, told me a silly story until my mother came. That was the Orion I had hoped for, the boy with the gentle hands. But that boy was gone. This man wanted power, not an Omega mate. Then, for one single, shattering moment, his eyes met mine. Across the clearing, his blue gaze locked on me. The world stopped breathing. The bond ignited. This is it. The moment. And there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. No recognition. No spark. Just ice. A cold, flat, empty glance that slid right off me. He turned away. Laughed at something the Alpha's daughter said. The fire inside me didn't just die. It was gone. A puff of black ash. He will break it. I know he will. The only question is, how many pieces will he leave me in? All representatives to the Great Hall. The roar of the messenger ripped through my frozen haze. The council meeting begins. The Alpha King is seated. The pack began to move, and I had to move too. I took a breath. It felt like swallowing glass. One step, then another, walking toward the Great Hall, toward him, toward the end of everything. Chapter 4. A Crown of Ash. The Great Hall was a sea of bodies, 100 different scents, pine, earth, bloodlust, and fear, all mingling under the heavy smoke of the torches. I stood near the back, a ghost. My Alpha, a stern man named Valerius, sat on his carved wooden throne looking small and insignificant below the high platform where the Alpha King watched us all. A hawk watching mice. The air was thick, heavy, waiting. Then my Alpha spoke my name. Ayla. My blood turned to ice. One word, and my world tilted. I walked forward. Each step was a lifetime. The packed earth was cold beneath my worn leather shoes. I kept my eyes down, my posture submissive. An Omega before her Alpha. But then I looked up and saw Orion. He was standing beside the throne, a triumphant, smug look on his handsome face. And I knew. Oh, goddess, I knew. Alpha Orion has found his fated mate, Valerius announced to the silent hall. His voice held no warmth. The bond inside me screamed with a final, desperate hope. Orion stepped forward. He looked down at me. That handsome face twisted into something ugly, a sneer. Her? He said, his voice loud enough for every wolf in the hall to hear. He laughed, a short, cruel bark. Moon goddess, you must be joking. He turned to the crowd. Look at her. She's an Omega, a common healer. She's nothing. He faced me again, his blue eyes filled with a disgust that cut deeper than any blade. I, Alpha Orion of the Blood Moon Pack, reject you, Ayla. You are too weak, too ordinary. You are not, and will never be, my mate. The words hit me, one after another. A physical blow. Weak. Ordinary. Nothing. The bond between us didn't just break, it shattered, exploding into a million pieces of icy dust inside my chest. The pain was blinding, a raw, gaping wound in my soul. I should have fallen. I should have cried. I should have begged, but I didn't. I just stood there. I met his gaze. I lifted my chin, and I let him see the ruin he had made of me, without giving him the satisfaction of a single tear.
From my high seat, I watched the pathetic little drama unfold. Another Alpha puffed up with his own importance. It was boring. I was about to dismiss them all when the girl, Ayla, looked up. And the phantom thread that had been pulling at me all day didn't just tug. It snapped. It became a steel cable, locking into my very soul with a force that stole my breath. It wasn't a pull anymore. It was a brand. A searing, white-hot connection that burned through me, linking me to her, the broken girl in the center of the room. I felt the shattering of her bond as if it were my own ribs cracking. The pain that washed over her, it washed over me. A wave of icy agony, shock, betrayal. My claws dug into the arms of my throne. Growl. A low, dangerous sound rumbled in my chest. Silas shot me a look, a question in his eyes. I ignored him. My mask of cold indifference remained perfectly in place. But beneath it, a volcano of pure, untamed fury was erupting. Who was this girl? And why did the sight of her breaking feel like it was breaking me? I watched her stand tall, her spine made of steel while her soul was bleeding out. And in that moment, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt since Lyra's betrayal. Possessiveness, a raw, primal rage that had only one thought. One word. Mine.
Chapter 5. A Shadow in the Silence. I don't remember walking away. It was all a blur. The shocked faces, the whispers starting to ripple through the crowd like a disease. My feet just moved. They carried me away from the center of the hall, away from the hundreds of judging eyes. Away from him. I found a dark alcove behind a thick tapestry, and I hid. I slid down the cold stone wall and wrapped my arms around my knees, making myself as small as possible. I just wanted to disappear, to crumble into dust. The pain was a living thing inside me, a monster with claws, tearing me apart from the inside out. My pack. My own people. They walked past my hiding spot. I could see their shadows through the gap in the tapestry. They didn't stop, they didn't even look. Their silence was worse than Orion's words. It was the final nail in my coffin. Unworthy. Unwanted. Nothing. Their shunning proved it. It proved Orion was right. I am nothing. My own pack. My family. They left me here to bleed. That's because to them, a rejected Omega is already dead. A ghost. A curse. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to hold myself together. But I was just a collection of broken pieces. What happens when your own soul tells you you're not good enough? Where do you go from there?
I couldn't focus. The words of the other alphas were just a meaningless buzz in my ears. All I could feel was her. The bond, our bond, was a burning fire in my veins. It screamed with her pain, her humiliation, her loneliness. From my throne, I watched as her pack members deliberately walked past her hiding place. They averted their eyes. They pretended she didn't exist. A low snarl vibrated in my throat. The disrespect was intolerable. To reject a mate is one thing, but for a pack to shun one of its own like that, it was a sign of deep sickness, a weakness I would not tolerate in my dominion. But it was more than that. So much more. It was personal. Every wolf that ignored her felt like a personal insult to me. A possessive primal rage was building inside me, a rage I hadn't felt in a very long time. I had to know who she was. I had to understand this impossible bond. Silas, I murmured, my voice dangerously quiet. My king, take over the proceedings. Before he could question me, I stood up. The entire hall fell silent. Every eye was on me. I ignored them all. I ignored the bowing alphas and the curious stares. My gaze was locked on that dark corner. My feet moved with a purpose that was not my own. It was the purpose of the beast inside me, the king, the wolf who had just found something precious and broken. A shadow fell over her. She looked up, her eyes wide with terror, and for the first time I saw their true color. Not the dull brown I'd seen from a distance, but a deep, rich amber, like honey filled with firelight.
Chapter 6. King and Thorn. A shadow fell over me, a huge, looming shadow that smelled of ozone and absolute power. I looked up, and my heart stopped. The Alpha King. He was standing there, staring down at me. His eyes were the color of molten gold, intense and piercing, like they could see right through my skin and into the shattered mess of my soul. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. What did he want? Was he here to finish the job? To cast out the rejected Omega? My only goal was to get away. To run. To hide. "You are the healer," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was a low, dark rumble that vibrated through the stone floor. I found my own voice. It was small, but it didn't tremble. "I am." He tilted his head, his golden eyes narrowing. He was studying me. I felt like an insect under a lens. "Your Alpha seems to value a warrior with a loud mouth over a healer with skilled hands. A poor strategic choice." The words surprised me. I expected pity or disgust, not analysis. A spark of my old self, the stubborn, defiant part I kept buried, flickered to life. "My Alpha values strength, Your Majesty. Pretty words and a strong sword arm are easier to see than a wound that is healing."
Her words were like a thorn. Sharp, unexpected. I had expected tears, pleading, the broken whimpering of a kicked pup. Instead, I found this, a fire banked low, but still burning. This defiant spark intrigued me more than any Alpha's posturing. The bond between us hummed, a low, powerful thrum of recognition. I wanted to hear more. I wanted to see more of the fire she kept hidden. "Strength?" I mused, taking a step closer. She flinched, but didn't look away. "True strength is knowing which assets to protect. Tell me, healer, what is the biggest threat to this territory?" I was testing her. I wanted to see how she thought. I expected her to say rogues or the rival packs to the west. Her answer, however, was not what I anticipated.
He was playing a game, a dangerous game, but I was too broken to care about the rules anymore. What else could they take from me? "The biggest threat isn't the rogues, my king," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "It's a harsh winter and a weak harvest. Wolves can fight off invaders, but they can't fight starvation. Loyalty dies when pups go hungry." He was silent for a long moment. His golden eyes searched my face, and I felt that strange, terrifying pull again. It wasn't just fear. It was something else. Something primal. Just as he was about to speak, the doors to the great hall burst open. A guard, covered in blood and breathing hard, stumbled in. "Rogues!" he screamed, panic in his eyes. "A coordinated attack! They've breached the Eastern Patrol! They're targeting the healers' tents!" Chaos erupted. Alphas shouted orders. Warriors scrambled for weapons. But the Alpha King didn't move. His burning gaze was still locked on me. In the middle of the pandemonium, he was an island of absolute calm. Then he did something that shocked the entire room into silence. He looked right at me. "You," he commanded, his voice cutting through the noise like thunder. "You're with me."
Chapter 7. Ride the Storm chaos was a familiar song. I moved through it, the shouts and screams of lesser wolves nothing but background noise. My focus was singular, a point of amber-eyed fire in the swirling mess. Her. The bond pulled, a physical thing now, demanding I keep her close. I ignored the gasps, the shocked stares from her own Alpha. Because they were his pack, they had already proven they couldn't protect her. I could. I would. I reached her side in 3 long strides. She looked up at me, that defiant chin still lifted, even as her world burned around her. I didn't speak. Words were a waste of time. I grabbed her arm, her skin was warm, electric, and pulled her toward my warhorse. The beast was massive, black as a starless night, and yet he stood steady for me. Always. What are you doing?" she stammered, Saving your life, I growled and swung myself into the saddle. Before she could protest, I reached down, my arm circling her waist, and lifted her. She was light, almost nothing. I settled her in front of me, her back pressed hard against my chest. Her scent, wildflowers and that unnamed something, filled my senses, a dizzying, intoxicating perfume. It was a distraction I should have fought. But I didn't. I wrapped the reins around us both, my arms caging her in. A low, possessive growl rumbled in my chest. She was mine to protect. That was the only thought my wolf would allow.
My breath was gone. One moment I was on the cold stone floor, the next I was here, pressed against the Alpha King's chest, a chest that felt like it was carved from solid rock. His arms were a cage of iron around me. I could feel the heat of him, the power rolling off him in waves. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. The horse lunged forward, a terrifying burst of speed that threw me back against him. A small, mortified squeak escaped my lips. His chest vibrated with a low chuckle, a dark, dangerous sound. We flew through the forest. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my cheeks. The trees were a green and brown blur. All I could feel was him, the hard muscle of his thighs on either side of mine, the steady, powerful beat of his heart against my back, the sheer, raw predator power of him. My body, the traitor, reacted before my mind could. A strange, coiling heat started low in my belly. It wasn't fear. And that scared me more than anything. What is happening to me? I should be fighting. I should be screaming. But I was frozen, caught in the eye of a storm named Axel, a storm that smelled of pine and ozone and a wildness that called to something deep inside me. He was the most dangerous creature I had ever met. So why did I feel safer than I had ever felt in my entire life? This question, this impossible contradiction, was a hook in my heart pulling me deeper into his dangerous world.
Chapter 8. Fangs in the Dark. We arrived to the scent of blood, rogue filth, and the metallic tang of shifter blood spilled on sacred ground. My eyes scanned the chaos. Wounded warriors from Ayla's pack were scattered, their movements sluggish. The healers' tents were shredded. This wasn't a random raid. It was an assassination attempt. They were trying to cripple the pack by killing its healers. A smart move. A vicious one. And it was aimed at her. I slid off the horse, pulling her down with me. Her eyes were wide, taking in the carnage. I saw the healer in her surface. Her fear was gone, replaced by a sharp, intense focus. She immediately moved toward the nearest wounded wolf, her hands already reaching for the herbs in the small pouch at her belt. Then I saw it, a shadow detaching itself from the trees, a big, ugly rogue with matted fur and yellow eyes, lunging straight for her back. My wolf reacted before I did. A blur of speed, a roar of absolute fury. I met the rogue midair, my claws sinking into its throat. It was over in a second. A wet, tearing sound, and the beast fell, dead before it hit the ground. I landed over its body, my eyes blazing. Ayla was staring, her hand over her mouth. Instead of shielding her, instead of telling her to hide, I trusted the fire I'd seen in her eyes. I trusted the bond. I turned my head and roared a single command that echoed through the clearing. Fight.
His command was a shock to my system. He didn't push me behind him. He didn't treat me like a fragile doll. He expected me to fight. No one had ever expected that of me. Not once. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The fear was burned away by a surge of pure hot adrenaline. Another rogue, even bigger than the first, broke through the trees, charging right for me. Its teeth were bared, saliva dripping from its jaws. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I saw its path. I saw the way its weight was distributed. My healer's knowledge wasn't just about mending. It was about knowing how a body works, where it is strong, and where it is weak. I dodged its initial lunge, my smaller size making me faster. The beast stumbled, trying to turn, and I saw my chance. A warrior had dropped a skinning knife. I scooped it up. As the rogue turned, I didn't go for its throat. I went for the spot just behind its front leg, the place where the muscle was thin, where a blade could slide between the ribs and find the heart. I plunged the knife in, hilt deep. The rogue let out a choked, gurgling cry and collapsed. I stood over it, my chest heaving, the bloody knife still in my hand. I had done it. I had done it. I looked up and met Axel's eyes across the clearing. There was no shock on his face, no surprise, only a fierce, burning approval. After the last of the rogues were dispatched, he came to me. The world was quiet now, except for the moans of the wounded. He gently took my arm, inspecting a long, shallow cut. His touch was surprisingly gentle. His thumb pressed firmly against my skin for a moment, and I felt a jolt, a spark of pure energy like a tiny bolt of lightning that left my skin tingling. It was an intimate, possessive gesture that said more than words ever could. Chapter 9. The Viper's Whisper. The fight was over, but the battle had just begun. I stood in the Alpha's tent back at the main encampment. The air was thick with the smell of fear and deceit. Silas stood beside me as I stared down at the trembling pup before me. He was a messenger from Ayla's pack, and he was the key. He had confessed everything because he was terrified of what would happen if I found out from someone else. "Tell me again," I commanded, my voice low and cold. The pup flinched. I was paid," he stammered, tears streaming down his face. "Alpha Orion's beta gave me the coin. He told me to spread the word that Orion was going to reject the Omega healer, to say he'd been planning it for weeks, to make it seem personal. So the rejection was staged, a performance. But why? Who gave the beta his orders?" I pressed. My patience was a thin, fraying thread. Just then, Ayla was escorted into the tent. Her eyes were wide, confused. She looked at the crying pup, then at me. Her gaze was a question I was about to answer. I heard the pup's words, and the world tilted on its axis again. Staged? A performance? The pain that had been a raw, open wound in my chest began to change. The agony slowly cooled, hardening into something else. Something solid. Something cold and sharp. Rage. It wasn't just that Orion thought I was unworthy. It was that I was a pawn. A piece in a game I didn't even know was being played. My humiliation had been a tool, a weapon used by someone else. That knowledge didn't heal the wound, but it gave my pain a direction, a target. My focus shifted from surviving my own heartbreak to a burning need for justice. Who would do this? Who would play with a sacred bond just for sport? The answer was worse than I could have imagined. The pup looked at Axel, his body shaking with terror. It wasn't our pack," he sobbed. "The order, the coin. It came from outside, from an alpha who hates you, my king." Axel's golden eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "Name him." The pup squeezed his eyes shut. He whispered the name like a curse, a name that I knew from whispered stories of brutal ambition and endless war. Cain. Alpha Cain, of the Shadowfang pack, a viper known for his poison and his plots. It all clicked into place. This was never about me and Orion. This was never about a broken bond. This was a political attack aimed directly at the Alpha King. And I, the worthless, invisible Omega, was the weapon they had chosen to use against him. I looked at Axel and saw a cold, deadly promise forming in his golden eyes. The game had just changed, and I was standing right in the center of the board. Chapter 10: The Gilded Cage. The journey to his territory was a blur of wind and raw power. I was still reeling from the revelation about Cain, about being a pawn in a king's game. And now, this. We crested a ridge, and I saw it. His fortress. It wasn't a castle of stone and wood. It was a mountain. A black, jagged peak that had been hollowed out, its windows like the eyes of some great sleeping beast. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It was a cage. Once inside, the feeling only grew. The halls were vast, carved from living rock and lit by glowing crystals. Warriors in black and silver armor nodded respectfully to Axel, but their eyes slid over me with suspicion, with resentment. I was the Omega who had distracted their king, the unwanted baggage from a messy political game. My goal was simple: survive. Don't show fear. Don't give them a single reason to think I was weak. It was a role I had been playing my whole life. Axel led me to a receiving chamber where his inner circle waited. They were all powerful, all dangerous. But one stood out: Silas, the Beta. His face was a mask of perfect loyalty, but his eyes held a chilling disapproval. I could feel it. He saw me as a problem, a mistake.
Bringing her here was the only logical choice. Because Cain had made her a target, she was safest under my direct protection. I could control this environment. I could control who came near her. What I couldn't control was the sentiment of my own pack. I saw the way they looked at her. I saw the doubt in their eyes. And I saw the judgment in Silas's. As soon as we were alone, he spoke. His voice was low, for my ears only. A rejected Omega from a minor pack, my king? Forgive me. But Cain used her to make you look impulsive. Bringing her here, into the heart of our stronghold. It makes you look weak. His words were a careful knife, wrapped in the silk of loyalty. She is not weak, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I don't mean her, Silas countered, his gaze intense. I mean you. I don't want to see a repeat of what happened with Lyra. A bond makes you vulnerable. Lyra. The name was a ghost, a scar on my soul. Silas, I said, my voice hardening into pure command. I have trusted your counsel since we were pups running in these mountains. We have fought back to back and bled together. Trust me now. He bowed his head. Always, my king. But as he walked away, I knew I had not convinced him. I had only delayed his argument. A seed of dissent had been planted in my own house. And Ayla, she was standing right in the middle of the growing storm. I had brought her here to protect her, but had I only put her in a more beautiful, more dangerous cage? Chapter 11. Claimed by Fire. The council chamber was a pit of vipers. My own alphas. My betas. Their murmurs were a low hiss, a poison spreading through the room. They were questioning me, questioning my strength. All because of her, because I had shown interest in a broken Omega. They saw her as a liability, a misstep. I saw my future. I knew in that moment that whispers and reassurances wouldn't work. I needed a thunderclap, an earthquake. I needed to remake their world in a single sentence. I stood up. The room fell silent. I walked to where Ayla stood by the wall, trying to make herself invisible. I took her hand. It was trembling, but she didn't pull away. I led her to the center of the room, to the foot of my throne. Every eye was on us. I could feel her fear, her confusion, and I could feel the unbreakable bond between us, a chain of fire and fate. I turned to face my counsel. You have questions, I began, my voice a low rumble that filled the vast chamber. I let my alpha power flow out, a crushing weight that demanded absolute attention. You whisper in the shadows. You wonder about my judgment. I pulled Ayla closer, my arm circling her waist, claiming her, protecting her. So let me be clear. I looked at each of them, my golden eyes blazing. This is Ayla. She is not a guest. She is not a pawn. My voice rose to a deafening roar. She is mine. She is your Luna. Silence. Complete and utter shock. I had just declared a rejected Omega from a backwater pack as their queen. It was a declaration of war on tradition, on their prejudice, and it was a point of no return.
Luna. The word echoed in the dead silence of the hall. It echoed in my head. Luna? Me? It was impossible. A dream. A nightmare. I could feel the shock from every wolf in the room. I could feel their hatred. And under it all, I could feel the solid, unshakable strength of the man holding me. He had just turned my life upside down. Again. Later, in his private chambers, a vast room of stone and fur and the scent of him, the shock finally broke. And fury took its place. You can't do that! I finally burst out, pulling away from him. You can't just claim me. You can't just decide that I'm your Luna. I already have, he said, his voice dangerously soft. He moved toward me, a predator stalking his prey. I am not a piece in your game, I insisted, my heart hammering against my ribs. I am not some prize to be claimed. No, he agreed, his voice a low purr as he backed me against a cold stone wall. He braced his hands on either side of my head, trapping me. His golden eyes burned into mine. You are not a prize. You are a warrior. You are a healer. You are a thorn in my side that I can't seem to pull out. He leaned in closer, his lips just a breath from mine. And you are my mate. I have felt it since the moment I saw you. My wolf has been screaming for you. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was a clash of wills, a storm of pent-up rage and frustration, and a desire so raw it stole the air from my lungs. I fought him for a moment, my hands pushing against his chest. But then, I melted. Because in his kiss, in his touch, in his fierce, possessive words, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt seen, I felt wanted, I felt worthy. Chapter 12, A Brother's Betrayal. After everything, I felt changed. The bond with Axel was no longer a confusing pull. It was a living, breathing thing inside me, a core of warmth and strength I'd never known. My mind was reeling, my body humming with a new energy. Needing air, I slipped out of his chambers, leaving him sleeping. The fortress corridors were dark and silent, lit only by the faint glow of the crystals. I was just trying to clear my head, to process the fact that I was a Luna. Then, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Silas. I knew he would be weak for you, he said. The respectful mask was gone. His face was a twisted snarl of righteous fury. His eyes, they were the eyes of a fanatic. Silas? I asked, confused. What are you talking about? Him, he spat, his voice a low, venomous hiss. Our king. He is compromised. He thinks with his heart now, because of you. He took a step closer, his presence menacing. A fated mate is not a strength for an alpha king. It is a fatal flaw, a weakness for his enemies to exploit. My blood ran cold. You're wrong. Am I? He sneered. Years ago, a female named Lyra betrayed him. She was a spy. He loved her, and she used that love to lead him into an ambush that nearly cost him his life. And this kingdom. He became the king we needed that day. Cold, hard, untouchable. You are undoing all of it. You are making him vulnerable all over again. The story hit me like a physical blow. That was the ghost in Axel's past, the reason for his icy walls. Then Silas delivered the final fatal strike. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. Alpha Cain wants a stable kingdom. He, like me, knows that Axel is strongest when he is alone, when he is unbroken by sentiment. My world stopped. You're working with Cain? Silas smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. I am not betraying my king, he said, his voice filled with a chilling, absolute conviction. I am saving him. From you. I opened my mouth to scream, but it was too late. He lunged. He was faster than I could have imagined. His hand clamped over my mouth, stifling my cry. The threat wasn't an invading army. It wasn't a rival alpha hundreds of miles away. It was right here. It was his brother, his most trusted friend, and I was in his hands.
Chapter 13. The Poison of Loyalty. His hand was a steel trap over my mouth. My scream was a muffled, useless puff of air. Silas, Axel's brother, his shadow, dragged me backward, his strength terrifying. He wasn't just strong, he was fueled by a fanatic's fire. He pulled me into a dark, hidden passage behind a tapestry, the stone cold and scraping against my back. The air grew stale, smelling of dust and time. "Don't fight me, Ayla," he whispered, his voice dangerously close to my ear. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. "This is for him. You must understand. I am freeing him." Freeing him? My mind reeled. This was madness. He was talking about saving Axel by handing him to his greatest enemy. He shoved me through a final doorway and into a room. A cell. It was round, made of rough-hewn stone, with no windows except for a single barred slit high above. The heavy oak door slammed shut with a deafening boom. I heard the thick, ugly sound of a metal bar sliding into place. I was a prisoner. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering. I had to get out. I had to warn Axel. I pushed against the door, but it was solid, unmoving. As my hands pressed against the cold stone walls, a strange weakness began to creep into my limbs. My head felt fuzzy. I looked down. A faint, shimmering dust coated the floor and the walls. Silver, and the bitter, sharp scent of wolfsbane. It wasn't just a prison. It was a cage designed to make me weak, to make me helpless. "The silver will keep you quiet." Silas's voice came from the other side of the door, muffled, but clear. "Cain's warriors are already inside the fortress. They are waiting. When Axel comes for you, and he will come for you, he will walk right into their trap." His voice was filled with a terrible, tragic certainty. He will be captured, not killed. Cain will break him of this weakness, this bond, and then he will be the king he was always meant to be. He thought this was an act of love, an act of loyalty. That was the most terrifying part of all. I was bait, and the man I was just beginning to care for was walking toward the trap, all because of me. Chapter 14. Echoes of Silence. The war room was a tense hive of activity. Maps were spread across the tables, strategies for a counterattack against Cain being debated. But my focus was fractured. I couldn't find Silas. He was my right hand, my strategist. His absence was a glaring tactical hole. It was more than that, though. It was wrong. A sour note in a familiar song. I kept reaching for the bond, for the constant warm hum of Ayla's presence that had become my new center of gravity. It was my anchor in the coming storm. I was in the middle of giving an order when it happened. The bond didn't just fade, it was severed. Cut. One moment, it was a blazing fire in my soul. The next, nothing. A cold, silent, terrifying void. The shock of it was so profound, so absolute, that the world went gray. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the edge of the table, a gasp of air rattling in my chest. It felt like a part of my own soul had been ripped out. "My king!" one of my captains cried out, rushing to my side. I shoved him away. "Ayla!" I snarled, the name a ragged tear in the silence of the room. I reached for her again with my senses. Nothing. Her scent was gone, masked. The silence from the bond was an active, screaming thing. It screamed of pain, of danger, of silver. And then I knew. The pieces clicked into place with brutal, soul-crushing clarity. Her disappearance, Silas's absence, the hidden passages only he and I knew of, the story of Lyra that he had thrown in my face. This was his doing. He was so blinded by the past, so terrified of me being hurt again, that he had decided to carve out my heart himself to save me. The betrayal was a cold, sharp blade twisting in my gut. But rage was a fire that burned hotter than pain. I let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the mountain. It was not the roar of a king. It was the roar of a male whose mate was in danger. I followed the faintest, lingering trace of her scent, a ghost on the air. Down into the old, forgotten parts of the fortress. I was no longer a strategist, I was a predator, and I was hunting her. And
Chapter 15. Blood and Belonging. The silver was a poison. It made my limbs feel like lead, my thoughts slow and syrupy. I was slumped against the wall when I heard it. A roar. A sound of pure, untamed rage that vibrated through the stone, making my very bones tremble. Axel. Then, boom. The heavy oak door didn't just open. It exploded inward, blasted into splinters by a force of pure will and fury. Axel stood there, framed in the doorway. He wasn't entirely human. His eyes were blazing gold, his fangs were descended, and his hands were tipped with thick black claws. He was magnificent. He was terrifying. He was here. But he wasn't alone. Silas stood behind him, a look of shocked horror on his face. And inside the room with me, 2 other wolves, strangers. Their scent was wrong. They smelled of the Shadowfang pack. They smelled of Cain. "You see," Silas screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. "She makes you reckless." Axel didn't even look at him. His golden gaze was locked on me, on the 2 wolves advancing toward me.
seeing her there, pale, weakened, and cornered, unleashed something ancient and brutal inside me. My vision went red at the edges. The civilized king was gone. Only the wolf remained. The traitors inside my home, my den, were a violation that could only be answered with blood. I didn't waste time on Silas. He was the disease. These 2 were the symptoms. I lunged, a blur of black and silver fury. The first wolf went down with a choked gurgle, my claws ripping out his throat. The second was faster, lunging not at me but at Ayla, but she was faster.
Even with the silver slowing me down, I saw the attack coming. Adrenaline was a fire that burned through the poison's haze. I wasn't the girl who stood frozen in the great hall anymore. I grabbed a jagged piece of the broken door, my fingers wrapping around the splintered wood. As the Shadowfang wolf lunged, I threw myself to the side and drove the makeshift stake into its side. It roared in pain and surprise, giving Axel the opening he needed. He was on the wolf in an instant, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. It was over in seconds. We stood in the bloody, silent room, breathing hard, back to back. He was the raw power. I was the unexpected strike. Together, we were a perfect team. He turned to me, his golden eyes scanning me for injuries, his fury softening into a fierce, raw concern. But the moment was shattered. From high above, the deep, mournful sound of the fortress alarm bells began to shriek. It was followed by the booming blast of a war horn from outside the gates. I looked at Silas. He was slumped against the wall, a broken fanatic's smile on his face. "It's too late," he rasped, blood trickling from his lips from where Axel had struck him. "It was all just a distraction. Cain's army is at the gates."
Chapter 16. The Breached Gate. The battle was fire and chaos. My pack fought with the fury of wolves defending their home, their alpha, their king. We were holding the main gate, a bloody, violent stalemate against Cain's horde. For every one of his warriors we took down, 2 more seemed to take their place. But we were holding, because we were the keepers of the mountain, because we were fighting for our lives. I moved through the battle, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, a black-furred angel of death. My strategy was sound. The gate would hold, while my secret weapon prepared to strike. I had sent Lorien, my oldest and most trusted advisor, with a hand-picked unit of elite warriors. Their mission, to use a secret ancient passage to flank Cain's army from behind. A pincer move that would crush them. It was a brutal, but brilliant plan. And I trusted Lorien with my life. A foolish, fatal mistake. From the top of the wall, I saw it. A secondary gate, a small reinforced door used for supplies, was swinging open. But it wasn't Lorien's warriors charging out. It was Kane's elite guard charging in. A flood of black-furred monsters pouring into the heart of my fortress, into my home. Lorien. He hadn't flanked them. He had invited them in. The betrayal was a cold, sharp shock, a blade of ice in the heat of battle. My line was broken. My warriors were now trapped between two fronts. Ayla! I roared her name, a desperate, frantic sound. I saw her across the courtyard organizing the healers, a beacon of calm in the chaos. Then the new wave of Kane's warriors crashed into us. We were separated. I fought, trying to get to her, but it was hopeless. I was surrounded.
The world devolved into a nightmare. One moment we were holding them back, the next. They were everywhere, pouring in from a side gate I didn't even know existed. Warriors I had just healed were cut down before my eyes. The healer's den was overrun. It was a slaughter. I screamed for my healers to fall back, to save themselves, but there was nowhere to go. Through the swirling chaos of bodies and blood, I saw him. Axel. He fought like a demon, a force of nature, but he was surrounded, hopelessly outnumbered. And then I saw another figure, a hulking monster of a wolf, his fur the color of dried blood, cut through the battle line toward him. Kane. My heart stopped. I tried to scream a warning, but the sound was lost in the din of battle. I could only watch. I watched as Kane, with a triumphant, savage roar, brought his massive, silver-edged blade down. I saw it slice through Axel's defenses. I saw it bury itself deep in his side. I saw the Alpha King, my mate, fall. Chapter 17. What burdens are for the battle wasn't over, but for me, it was. The main fight had been lost the moment Axel fell. Using the hidden ways my mother had shown me as a child, small tunnels meant for servants and omegas, I slipped through the chaos. I moved like a ghost, my only thought to get to him. I found him in the ruins of the courtyard, his elite guards dead around him. A grim, silent circle of loyalty. He was alive, barely. His blood stained the ground, a dark, terrible pool. I fell to my knees beside him, my hands hovering over the gruesome wound in his side. It was deep, too deep, and it smelled wrong, tainted with the sickly sweet scent of silver. His golden eyes fluttered open. They found me. Even in his pain, his first thought was not of himself. Ayla, he rasped, his voice a ghost of its former power. He reached for my hand, his touch weak and cold. Run, you have to. Run, save yourself. His words. They were meant to be kind, but they were the cruelest blow of all. Save yourself. It was what you said to a burden. It was what you said to a curse you wanted to be free of. Silas was right. My pack was right. Orion was right. I was a weakness. I brought ruin. I had taken this powerful, untouchable king, and I had broken him. The guilt was a physical weight, a crushing stone on my chest. This was all my fault. Because I was in his life, he was dying. No, I choked out, tears finally streaming down my face, hot and useless. I'm not leaving you. Please, he whispered, his eyes starting to close. Don't let him have you. He won't, I promised, my voice shaking. And he won't have you either. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I could do. But I knew I would not leave him here to die. That was not an option. Ignoring the searing pain in my own soul, I hooked my arms under his. He was a dead weight, a fallen mountain. But somehow, fueled by a desperate, guilty strength, I began to drag him. Away from the battle, away from the death he had suffered for me, toward a secret place, a place of last resorts. Chapter 18. The Root and the Crown. The den was small and hidden, deep in the roots of the mountain. The only sounds were the distant, muffled screams of battle and Axel's breathing. It was shallow, ragged, a death rattle. I had done everything I could. I had cleaned the wound. I had applied my strongest salves, the ones made with crushed silver thistle and spider silk. It wasn't enough. The silver poison was in his blood. It was killing him from the inside out. I could feel his life slipping away through our bond, a flickering flame about to be extinguished. This was it, the end of everything. My rejection by Orion, the shunning of my pack. And now, watching the only person who ever saw me, who ever valued me, die because of me. It was all the same story. A story about a worthless girl who was a burden to everyone she touched. I held his hand, his skin growing colder by the second. I was a curse, a walking plague. And then, something inside me shifted. The despair didn't just fade, it burned away. It was incinerated by a sudden white-hot flash of pure, undiluted rage. They were wrong, all of them. Orion didn't reject me because I was weak. He rejected me because he was a coward. My pack didn't shun me because I was a burden. They shunned me because they were blind. My skills weren't ordinary. They were secrets. They were power. And my worth. My worth was not something they could give me. It was not something they could take away. It was mine. It had always been mine. I looked down at the dying king, the dying man, my mate. He had seen my worth. He had called me his Luna. He had trusted me to fight by his side, and I would not let him die. I knew what I had to do. The old magic. The dangerous, forbidden art my mother had whispered to me about in secret. Healing that wasn't just about herbs and spells. Healing that drew on life itself. It was forbidden because it was dangerous. It could kill the healer if her will wasn't strong enough. But my will had never been stronger. I am not a burden to be discarded. I am a healer. I am a Luna. And I will save my mate. I placed my hands over the wound on his chest. I closed my eyes, and I began to chant the ancient words. A strange green light began to glow under my palms. It was the color of new leaves, of stubborn life, of a power they had tried to bury. And it was mine to command. Chapter 19. Life from a Spark. The magic was a river, and I was drowning in it. It poured out of me, a torrent of green, glowing energy, sinking into Axel's chest. I could feel my own life force draining away, my vision going gray at the edges. The ancient words my mother had taught me were a desperate chant on my lips. It was too much. The poison in his blood was too strong. I was going to fail. I was going to die here with him. Just as my last bit of strength began to flicker out, something changed. The river of energy stopped flowing out. Instead, a new current, a trickle at first, then a warm, steady stream began to flow back. It flowed from him, through our bond, and into me. It was his strength, his raw kingly power, now pure and untainted, pouring back into me, replenishing what I had lost. The bond wasn't a one-way street. It was a circle, a perfect, unbreakable circle of give and take. My head cleared. The weakness receded. I opened my eyes and looked right into his.
I woke with a gasp. Air flooded my lungs, clean and sweet. The fire was back. The pain, the cold, the creeping silver-laced death, it was all gone. I didn't just feel healed, I felt reborn, stronger, more powerful than I had ever been in my life. My golden eyes snapped open and found hers, Ayla. She was pale, exhausted, but she was glowing. A faint, ethereal green light still clung to her, the scent of new life and ancient magic radiating from her skin. And I saw her. For the first time, I truly saw her. Not just as a healer, not just as my mate, but as a force of nature. She hadn't just mended a wound, she had commanded life to return. The sheer, awesome power of it humbled me. My crown, my armies, my strength, They were nothing compared to the power she held in her small, gentle hands. "You saved me," I whispered, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. Awe, reverence, love. She gave me a small, tired smile. Her hand was still on my chest, a warm, steady anchor. "It's what mates do," she said, her voice soft but sure. "We save each other." In that moment, lying in the dark, hidden heart of my own mountain, with the sounds of my kingdom falling above us, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was not just my mate, she was my queen, and I would see the entire world burn before I let anyone harm her ever again. This I swore.
Chapter 20. Aluna's Gambit. Just as Axel was finding his feet, a figure stumbled into our hidden den. A warrior. One of Axel's guard, his silver and black armor torn and bloody. His face was a mask of despair. "My king!" he gasped, falling to one knee. "It's over. Cain has the fortress. The pack is scattered, broken." He looked up, his eyes filled with a terrible, hopeless grief. "He's rounding up prisoners. He's going to make an example of them at dawn." A ticking clock, a death sentence for our people. Axel's reaction was pure primal rage. A low, dangerous growl tore from his chest. "I'll kill him," he snarled. "I'll tear his throat out myself." His plan was simple. A frontal assault. A king's glorious final suicidal charge. But while he saw a battle to be won with fang and claw, I saw something else. I saw a puzzle. And I saw the missing piece. "No," I said, my voice quiet, but cutting through his rage. He turned to me, his golden eyes blazing. "A direct attack will fail," I continued, my mind racing, the pieces clicking into place. "We are outnumbered, but Cain has a weakness, a fatal one. He is arrogant. He thinks he has already won."
I listened as she spoke. Her voice was not the voice of a frightened Omega. It was the voice of a commander, a strategist, a queen. She didn't talk about troop strength or battle lines. She talked about the things she knew, the things they had all overlooked. "The fortress isn't just stone and wood," she explained, her amber eyes bright with a fierce intelligence. "It's a living thing. There are hidden tunnels, meant for servants, that lead right into the main larders. There are old vents from the geothermal springs under the mountain that come up in the courtyard." She began to lay out a plan. A healer's war, a ghost's attack. She spoke of using the secret herb gardens to gather chokeweed and pollen dust. Not to kill but to confuse. To create chaos with thick, disorienting smoke. She described how they could use the tunnels to strike at their supplies, to start fires, to create the illusion that our army was everywhere at once. It wasn't a plan for a glorious battle. It was a plan for a clever, brutal, and stunningly effective victory. It was brilliant. I looked at her, and my love was eclipsed by a wave of pure, unadulterated respect. I turned to the handful of survivors we had gathered. Their faces were grim, their hope nearly extinguished. "You have your orders," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound conviction. I looked at Ayla. "From your Luna."
Chapter 21. The Rising Tide. The tunnels were tight and smelled of damp earth and history. They were the paths of the forgotten, the invisible. And tonight, they were our greatest weapon. We moved like ghosts under the feet of our enemies. I led one small team, our pouches filled with the smoke bombs and irritants I had prepared. Axel led the other, his warriors ready for a fight. Our plan was simple. I would be the chaos. He would be the sword. We emerged into the main kitchens. The guards there were fat and lazy, laughing and drinking. They never saw us coming. My smoke bombs were small clay pots filled with dried chokeweed. When thrown, they erupted in thick, acrid yellow clouds. The guards choked. Their eyes watered. They couldn't see. They couldn't breathe. We were gone before they even knew what had hit them. We moved through the fortress, spreading chaos, spreading confusion, spreading fear.
Her plan worked, better than I could have ever imagined. The fortress was in chaos. Cain's warriors were disorganized, panicked, fighting shadows. They thought my army was a legion of demons, striking from the very walls. While they were blinded and confused, my warriors struck. We hit them hard. We hit them fast. A brutal, efficient wave of silver and black fury. The tide of the battle turned in a matter of minutes. Cain's forces weren't just being defeated, they were being dismantled. Through the bond I could feel her, a steady, brilliant flame of courage and intelligence. She was my anchor, my guide in the swirling smoke. I saw her across the courtyard, a slim, deadly figure directing her team with hand signals. Our eyes met, and in that moment we both knew. It was time to cut the head off the snake. We moved as one. No words were needed. We fought our way toward the great hall, our movements a seamless dance of death and destruction, her chaos and my fury, her mind and my strength. My warriors followed, a rising tide of hope and vengeance. We blasted through the doors of the throne room, and there he was, Alpha Cain, standing before my throne, his face a mask of shocked, murderous rage. He was surrounded by his elite guard, but it didn't matter. He was a king in a collapsing castle. He was cornered, and he was ours.
Chapter 22. The King and the Healer. The great hall stank of blood and desperation. My throne, was a backdrop for the arrogant posture of a usurper. Alpha Cain stood there, surrounded by his last 5 elite guards, a cornered animal spitting venom. His face, when he saw us, was a mask of shocked, murderous rage. He sneered, his gaze dismissing Ayla as if she were a piece of furniture, a fatal, foolish error. So, Cain snarled, his eyes locked on me. The dead king walks. You think you've won, Axel? All because you found a new pet? My rage was a physical force, a black, coiling inferno in my chest. A low growl ripped from my throat, a promise of the pain I was about to deliver. I wanted to tear him apart. I wanted to shred his flesh from his bones for what he did to my pack, for what he did to her. But as I moved to attack, I felt a calm, steadying pulse through the bond. Ayla. Her mind was not a storm like mine. It was a still, deep, and deadly lake. She was not afraid. She was calculating. I engaged his guards, a whirlwind of fury, trusting her implicitly. Because she was my partner. Because her mind was now as much my weapon as my own claws. He called me a pet. Cain saw what everyone else had always seen, a weak, worthless omega. He had no idea how wrong he was. I was not a shield for Axel to hide behind. I was the second blade in the attack, the one you don't see coming. While Axel, a magnificent storm of righteous fury, crashed into the guards, I moved. I wasn't an alpha. I couldn't match them in strength, but I was a healer. I knew the body. And I was a survivor. I knew how to use my environment. I reached into the pouch at my side. It wasn't filled with healing herbs now. It was filled with vengeance. I threw 2 small clay pots. They shattered at the guard's feet, releasing a cloud of concentrated pepper bark and pollen dust. It wasn't lethal. It was worse. The giant wolves choked, their eyes streaming, their senses blinded by a sudden, agonizing fire. They were helpless. It was the opening Axel needed. He tore through them like they were paper dolls. Now it was just Cain. He was a powerful alpha, his size and strength a match for Axel's. They crashed together, a brutal explosion of fang and claw. But I wasn't watching the fight like a spectator. I was watching the room. I saw the heavy, ornate iron brazier hanging by a thick rope directly above the throne. I saw the way Cain kept forcing Axel back toward that exact spot. I saw his trap, and I saw my opening. I grabbed a fallen dagger. I didn't run toward the fight, I ran toward the rope. With a single powerful slice, I cut it. The massive brazier, filled with glowing coals, plummeted downward. Cain, hearing the sound, made a fatal mistake. He looked up. In that split second of distraction, Axel struck. It was a final, decisive, and brutal blow. Cain fell, and the war was over. I stood there, breathing hard, the dagger in my hand. I had not been the reason for the battle. I had been the reason for the victory. The pack warriors who flooded the hall saw it. They saw their king, and the Luna who had won his kingdom back by his side.
Chapter 23. The Weight of Mercy. The sun began to rise, its pale light washing over the devastation in the courtyard. The fighting was over, but the cost was immense. The air, thick with the smell of blood and death, was slowly starting to clear, replaced by the cool, clean scent of the morning. My pack was broken, wounded, but victorious, and it was all because of her. Ayla was not celebrating. She was already at work. Her warrior spirit had receded, and the healer had taken its place. She moved among the wounded, her hands glowing with that soft green light. Her voice was a calm, steady command, directing the other healers, her presence a beacon of hope in the grim aftermath. And I saw something that made my heart ache with a fierce, profound pride. She was not just treating our own. She knelt beside one of Cain's surrendered warriors, a young wolf with a shattered leg, and began to mend his bones with the same gentle care she had shown our own people. She was showing them what a true Luna was, not just a symbol of power but a source of life. Then, the traitors were brought before me. Lorien, his face a mask of shame, and Silas, my brother, my friend. He was on his knees, broken and defeated, but his eyes still held that fanatic's certainty. The pack circled them, their growls a low, hungry rumble. They wanted blood, they wanted justice, and every instinct in me, every fiber of my being screamed to give it to them, to execute the men who had betrayed me, who had nearly destroyed us all. My hand rested on the hilt of my blade. I was the king. Justice was mine to deliver.
I saw the look in Axel's eyes, a cold, hard fire, the look of a king about to become an executioner. The pack wanted vengeance, and in their place, I might have wanted it too. But as I looked at the broken men, at my own exhausted people, I knew that more blood was not the answer. It would only poison the ground we needed to rebuild on. I stepped forward, moving to stand beside Axel. I placed a hand on his arm. He looked down at me, his golden eyes filled with a terrible, righteous fury. "Axel," I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the sudden silence. "Don't." I turned to the pack. "Look at us," I said, my voice growing stronger. "We are wounded. We are grieving, but we are alive. We won. Vengeance. It is a fire that warms you for a moment, but it will burn your house down in the end. A pack that only knows how to kill will eventually turn on itself." I looked at Silas, my heart aching not with hatred, but with a strange, sad pity. Justice is not always about death. Sometimes it is about living with what you have done. I proposed a new way, a different kind of justice. Exile for Lorien to a barren land where he would harm no one else. And for Silas, a life of service, rebuilding the walls he helped to breach, tending the graves of the warriors who died because of his choices, a punishment far harder than a quick death. The pack was silent. They were listening. Axel stared at me, his inner storm slowly calming. He saw the wisdom in my words. He saw the strength it took to offer mercy. He took a deep breath, and his hand left the hilt of his sword. He looked out at his people. "So be it," his voice boomed clear and final. "The Luna has spoken." Chapter 24. A kingdom of 2 weeks later, the scent of fresh-cut pine had replaced the smell of smoke and blood. The fortress was healing, just like its people. Scaffolding crisscrossed the breached walls, and the sound of hammers was a constant, hopeful rhythm. Life was returning to a new kind of normal, a better kind. I sat at a large oak table in what were now our chambers, a map of trade routes spread before me. I was no longer just a healer. I advised on supply lines, on diplomatic messages, on the welfare of the pups and the elders. I was a ruler. I caught my reflection in a pane of polished glass. The woman staring back at me was different. The hunted, haunted look was gone from her amber eyes. In its place was a quiet, steady confidence. Her shoulders were straight, her chin was high. I was not the ghost from the healer's hut. I was not the rejected Omega from the Great Hall. I was Ayla, Luna of the Mountain Pack. And I finally truly knew my own worth. It wasn't a title he had given me. It was a truth I had claimed for myself.
I watched her from the doorway. My queen. She was so focused, so fiercely intelligent, so beautiful. The love I felt for her was a physical presence, a sun in my chest that had burned away all the ice. She hadn't just saved my life. She had saved my soul. Before her, I was a king ruling a kingdom of stone and shadow. She had taught me that a true kingdom is built on mercy, on hope, on a bond that is stronger than any wall. She had brought the spring back to my endless winter. I walked up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist, pulling her back against my chest. I rested my chin on her shoulder, inhaling her scent. Wildflowers. Home. You carry the weight of this kingdom very well, I murmured into her hair. She leaned back against me, her body melting into mine. It's not so heavy, she said, her voice a soft, happy sigh. When I don't have to carry it alone. We were silent for a long time, just watching the sun set over our lands. The colors painted the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and purple and gold. Our kingdom, our future. Are you happy, Ayla? I asked, the question more important than any treaty or decree. She turned in my arms, her amber eyes shining with a light that was all her own. She placed a gentle hand on my cheek. I am more than happy, Axel, she whispered. I am home. Just then, a guard entered, bowing low. He held out a scroll, sealed with a strange, unfamiliar crest, a coiled serpent with wings. A new threat? A new ally from a distant land? I took the scroll, but I didn't open it. My eyes were still on Ayla. Whatever it was, whatever new storm was gathering on the horizon, we would face it, together.